Alabama's Governor Robert Bentley has agreed to resign after negotiations following a report indicating that he not only had a questionable affair, but he used taxpayer money to maintain that affair and also cover it up. Also, we have some evidence based on that report indicating that he took some action regarding DMVs in predominantly black neighborhoods and how he essentially shut them down for political reasons. So the governor reached an agreement with state lawmakers and law enforcement officials early Monday morning. That was yesterday, to step down. The terms of the deal were not immediately available. Now, a report was released by Jack Sharman, who is the House Judiciary Committee's special counsel, and the report and its supporting documentation revealed embarrassing details about Bentley's relationship with former aide Rebekah Mason and provided evidence of potential criminal misuse of state resources. Now, last Friday when we covered this story, of course he hadn't resigned yet. He was actually being very defiant, but we did show you or have you listen to audio evidence of the affair that he had. I apologize if you've already heard this and you have to listen to it again, but I am going to play it. Let's take a listen.
When I stand behind you and I put my arms around you and I put my hands on your breast and I put my hands on your ear and pull you in real close. I love that too. Put my hands under you.
You know,
Is he talking in the bathroom?
He's in the 70s. He's talking about cupping her ample bosom.
By the way,
behind.
Remarkably similar to Bill O'Reilly's conversations that took place from what we know from the sexual harassment thing and also his audiobook.
This is incredible. So again, I've said this before. And I want to repeat it again. I don't care about the affair. Right? Even if he's like a family values conservative dude, yes, there's a hypocrisy. Yes, it's annoying. And that's enough to really anger people. The part that really frustrated me about his actions were the misuse of taxpayer money. And then now, all of a sudden, we have more information about what he did because of this report, and it has to do with voting rights. It has to do with, political manipulation and exploiting people, coercion. And so we'll get to that in just a second. But Grace, you look like you want to jump in.
Oh, there's just so much with this guy. Where to begin? I mean, we could talk about the prison situation going on in Alabama right now and his proposal for some just more mass incarceration because that's what he feels is the solvent for what's going on in these overpopulated Alabama prisons. Or we could talk about the closures of multiple DMVs, 8 out of 10 of which were in districts of color. Predominantly Americans of color. I mean, where to start with this guy?
While also supplementing it with voter ID laws so that they can effectively eliminate people from voting.
Or pocket vetoing when the Democrats propose something like, all right, look, fine, you want to close our DMVs, what about longer hours for the DMVs that we do have? And you just pocket vetoed it. What a bitch move. This guy sucks on every level.
He does. So let me fill in the blanks with that component of the story because it's incredibly important and no one else is focused on it because let's keep it real, a sex scandal is much more, titillating than talking about
use of the word titillating.
Right? Rather than focusing on the people who have been disenfranchised and had their voting rights taken away from them as a result of this scummy guy. So apparently his administration's decision to close 31 driver's license offices, many in African-American heavy counties, prompting a national outcry over how the closures would affect voting rights in the state, which requires a photo ID to vote. So action number 1 was you need a photo ID to vote. Keep in mind that a lot of people who live in these predominantly black neighborhoods don't have photo IDs because they rely heavily on public transportation and they never needed to get a photo ID. So that already affected them negatively when it came to voting. And then all of a sudden you shut down DMVs in predominantly black neighborhoods. And so it becomes even more harder to get the ID. So you're probably thinking this only has to do with discrimination. This only has to do with them shutting the opposition by, making it even more difficult or in some cases almost impossible to vote. So that's bad enough. But this was also done as a way to basically convince lawmakers to go along with his budget proposal, because he proposed a budget that would raise taxes and also spend a lot more of taxpayer money. And a lot of lawmakers in the state were like, no, well, this is not a good idea. So they did not want to sign on to it. And as a result, he was like, I might shut down the DMVs in your neighborhood unless you agree with me.
Yeah, because we're talking about a budget proposal that in large part was for something like 800 million. That's not right. But it was for a lot.
You're right.
It wasn't $800 million for a prison.
It's $800 million to build 4 new prisons while closing 16, while the state is closing down 16 closures.
The closures that were taking place were affecting an area of Alabama called the Black Belt, basically the African American communities in Alabama. And then, so when the lawmakers were being threatened by this, it was because he wasn't, they weren't supporting this budget that also disproportionately affected the constituents of those counties, because prisons, as we know, disproportionately affect Black Americans.
Yep.
So it's so sick and it's so gross. And Alabama has these insane mandatory minimums. It's so frustrating to read this through.
Well, the good news is, because of this report, because of this investigation, he will be stepping down. Again, he was fighting tooth and nail to remain in his position, even though there were so many instances of wrongdoing here. And so I'm glad that there was action taken against him, and he will step down as a result. But it's just very important for everyone to keep a very close eye on what lawmakers are doing in various states when it comes to voting, whether it's gerrymandering, which John Oliver did an excellent piece on, you guys should all check it out, or closing down DMVs, passing these voter ID laws. I mean, on its face, voter ID laws seem like they make a lot of sense. Like, everyone should have an ID when they vote, except voter fraud is not an issue. The only time we ever hear about voter fraud is when there's a Republican doing it. And also, a lot of people don't have driver's licenses because they don't drive. They don't have state IDs because they don't need state IDs. So those are usually the people that rely on things like public transportation. These are ways to essentially do away with our democratic system, or whatever's left of it, right? And so just be very cognizant of that and very suspicious when you see this type of behavior.
I wanted to make a correction. It's 13 out of the 15 state facilities that are prisons that are being shut down.
Yeah.
I said 16 originally. And also, one little last tidbit of irony in this entire, this delicious cake of weirdness here in Alabama. When he got caught, and he got caught for using state funds. He wasn't charged with a prison sentence, even though he's very gung-ho on crime himself. Ironically, when he committed a crime, he only got 30 days of community service.
Corporate media is awesome.
Wrong.
Independent media is the way to go.
Believe me. Believe me.
Support independent media right now. Become a Young Turks member. TYTnetwork.com/join.